Well, it's finally here. The highly anticipated limited edition Smart Wool and Grateful Dead collection has finally dropped exclusively at smartwool.com.
You may know Smart Wool as the go-to brand for all things merino wool, from socks to base layers. Smart Wool has been keeping people comfortable outside for decades with some of the softest and ethically sourced merino wool out there.
Well, Smart Wool's limited edition collection and collaboration with the Grateful Dead is back by popular demand right in time for the holidays.
From t-shirts and hoodies to beanies and socks, now you can have the next level comfort of Smart Wool with all your favorite iconic Grateful Dead designs. Shop the drop exclusively at smartwool.com and get it before it's gone for good. Gone for good. That's Smartwool, SMARTWOOL.com.
Hello and welcome to Season 4 of the Undermine podcast by Osiris Media. I'm Tom Marshall, and I'll be your host as we revisit, relive, re-listen, and maybe redefine Phish's fabled Fall 97 tour. That's the now legendary tour where, according to the band's marketing materials at the time, their hands were faster than guns. And with those, they destroyed America. Well, within the context of the traveling rock and roll circus, that was Phish Tour Fall 97. Today's co-host is my favorite co-host of all time, according to a guy named Benji Eisen. And my co-host today is Undermine ghostwriter and fellow executive producer, Benji Eisen. Hi, Benji.
Hi, Tom. Did you write that line or was I taking dictation?
Well, all that aside, we're going all completely off the cuff here, right? There's no writers.
Exactly right.
And I'm supposed to ask you one thing, though. What is the one thing Phish and the Grateful Dead have in common? And this is not a joke.
Well, I am so glad that you asked that. In the end, it's not the Type 2 jams or the two sets or the culture that unites the two bands. Instead, it is just this one little fact, and that is that both the Grateful Dead and Phish have performed at Hampton Coliseum exactly 21 times. Now, of course, that will hopefully date this episode as everyone continues to hold their breath for a Hampton return. I know that I'll take a spring sit back, please. Okay, so I guess we're starting the rumor.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to immediately, once we hear from management, immediately dial back to the rumor and qualify it as just wishful thinking. So therefore, everyone mark my words. Phish may or may not play Hampton Coliseum this spring. The only thing we know for certain is that Phish absolutely 100% was there 25 years ago today. And so was I, and so was our guest. But first, in the words of Elvis Presley, who, by the way, performed 5 sold-out shows at Hampton Coliseum, let's TCB. That doesn't stand for Tom something Benji, it stands for taking care of business. So here it goes. If you're enjoying what we're doing on the show, please consider subscribing to and supporting our new Osiris Premium offering, which you can join for just a couple bucks a month. You will get bonus episodes of HF Pod and Undermine. You'll get ad-free episodes. You get access to the full archival Under the Scales catalog.
Wow.
Discounts on Osiris merch. Yeah, there's a lot of those episodes back there that are just awesome to go back and listen to. You get meet and greets, AMAs, the opportunity to guest on our shows. How do you think I got here? And check out osirispod.com/premium or click on the link in the show notes. And Tom, there's one more thing.
Yes.
So we know that you, and by you, I'm now talking to our audience, everyone has a lot of memories of these Fall 97 shows. We have received so many messages asking, people that want to share their stories and come on the show. And we want to hear from you. So the best way to do this is if you could send us a video clip of you talking about these shows. Keep it to 60 seconds max. That's 1 minute long. I don't know how to do that. Post them on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, tag Osiris Pod. And we will choose a contributor at random who will then win, drum roll, a handwritten copy of the lyrics to Ghost from our friend Tom Marshall. See, Tom, you're a ghostwriter too. And you're going to tell us about our guest today.
As far as being a ghostwriter, my ghost was friendly, so I'm actually a friendly ghostwriter.
There you go.
Today's guest of honor is Craig Hillwig, who you probably follow on Twitter, Benji.
I do, and you probably do too, actually.
I definitely do. He's Chillwig, by the way, on Twitter. Craig is a longtime Phish fan, a taper, a friend, and a contributor to Under the Scales, Undermine, and HF Pod. And he's also the person who originally connected me and RJ. So without him, I guess maybe Osiris wouldn't be here. So you can blame him or thank him, depending on your take. Let's bring him in from the waiting room. He's here. Hi, Craig. How are you?
Hey, Tom. Hey, Benji. Thanks for having me on. How are you guys?
We're fantastic. And thank you so much for coming on. Craig, we're going to jump right in. Give us some of your own personal backstory that brought you to Hampton Coliseum on this night, 25 years ago, 11/21/97. How long had you been seeing Phish by this point?
By this point, I had only been seeing Phish about 2 years. My first show was December 95. So I got on, I was one of the deadheads who jumped off. So maybe that's why Hampton kind of held sort of a special mythology for me, because as a deadhead, Hampton was a mecca even before there was a Phish, or at least before we knew of Phish outside of small Northeast college towns. But This was not my first time to Hampton either. So I did not go to the Warlocks. Unfortunately, I had a test. So we all know how that worked out. But I finally made it there to see the Dead in 92. Caught a couple of shows there that spring. I caught Jerry Band there. Saw Clarence play with Jerry Band there. Oh. That was really awesome. Fast forward, I think my first time seeing Phish there was 96. We drove down for a one-off, kind of an unremarkable show. But by the time 97 rolled around and they announced 2 shows, as soon as I saw that it was 2 shows, that was a no-brainer. One shows, it's a long drive.
It's a real long drive. Were you taping at the time?
I was. So, I was looking for opportunities to tape Phish, and the fall tour was kind of strange. The way they routed it started way out west, then came out to Hampton, then came up north, then went out Midwest. So, there was a few opportunities for me to work in some shows, and it ended up being for me Hampton and the 2 Philly shows, of course, for the hometown run.
We're tracing the tour, and so it's interesting. The routing is exactly as you remember it. It's also interesting. I'm glad that you brought up the fact that this was their first 2-night stand at Hampton. I remember specifically not going down to the one the year before because it was such a haul for me at the time living in Pennsylvania, and this was the first time when we really took over. It was a total takeover of the whole area. Being the whole weekend there, and we kind of, us being Phish fans, kind of descended on to Spaceship Phish, and then we called it the Mothership and all these other things. But this was 6 shows into the 21 show tour, and as you said, it kicked off out west in Las Vegas just a week earlier than this night. And since this was before the age of live Phish, before we could have pocket downloads, was this the first fall 97 Phish that you actually heard?
I'd have to think about that. My guess is that early in the tour, I would have to say yes. It was not uncommon for me to get DATs of the first few runs of shows of a tour mailed to me on the road, either because I was involved with a tape tree or something like that at a top level. So, we always had mailers with us on the road. And, after a run, it was not uncommon to just drop either a set of backup masters in the mail to somebody, and they would get the copying going. That was, the way it was for summer '97, because we were getting Europe tapes shipped to us every week. And by the time Virginia Beach rolled around, at least I had heard all the new songs. So when they came out and they opened up with A Huge Ghost, it was unsurprising and it was exciting. And it was exactly what I had hoped that we might get, even though we didn't know. But, that prompted me to drive all the way down to Virginia Beach just to catch the opener. In fact, I think it might have been your tickets, Tom. You were supposed to go and you couldn't go. And I ended up going with our friend Andy. But anyway, I was hoping that a little bit of the Hampton magic would rub off into Virginia Beach. And it was a great show. We know it subsequently, recently over the pandemic, became a dinner in the movie release. And they also remastered the audio and put that out. Just a tremendous show if you haven't checked it out already. And it was, the first sort of glimpse that the United States got of, what ultimately we would get that fall.
Definitely. And let's just plunge into the first set. They open the run by debuting their cover of Emotional Rescue. And I personally, I had friends at high school that were totally into Some Girls. And then I think Emotional Rescue came out directly after that. And
Correct.
It was sort of a disappointment. The album was. The song, though, was great. But I don't think the album, like Some Girls, every song on there is amazing. And then this one, at least to the party crowd I was in, it wasn't the party album that Some Girls, but I did know the song and I was very surprised. They continue, Phish funks it out for 17 minutes. Were you familiar with the song and what were your immediate impressions?
Sure. I was familiar with the song. I'm a couple years younger than you. So, for us, Emotional Rescue was that weird album before Some Girls, which was
before Some Girls.
It was after Some Girls, right?
Yeah,
it became between right. Some Girls and Tattoo You.
Yes.
So so we knew Emotional Rescue, but that was really about it because we really didn't listen to the whole album.
Exactly.
But I was really excited. I jumped straight up in the air. But if you listen to the audience tape, the crowd. You hear. I listened to my audience tape. First of all, the pre-show music. I had to look it up because I didn't know it. It was Lucius Jackson, Rock Freak. So if you can imagine the hullabaloo in Hampton, and you hear Rock Freak, and then the lights go down, and people are going nuts because it's the first night of Hampton. Place is going bonkers. And band takes the stage, a little bit tuning up noises. What's it going to be? What's it going to be? And Phish drops and it's like the air drops out of the room. It is silence on the audience tape. Nobody knew what it was except for like all the old dudes in the taper section, basically.
See, that's funny because, I was one of the silent ones. I remember thinking, I wasn't familiar. I was familiar with the Rolling Stones, but, like the radio stuff. So I wasn't familiar with Emotional Rescue. We couldn't get notifications on our phone. So I have no idea how or when I found out that there was a Rolling Stone cover. I think it was, during the rendition. Maybe I took Trey's advice and asked the guy next to me. But by 6 minutes into it, it's clear that we are in the jam zone. In hindsight, after, upon re-listens, they go right from the song right into what was certified Cal Funk. And by certified, I mean, they had been playing funk beforehand, as, we've detailed even in 95 with some Wolfman Brothers. But Cal Funk really, refers to Fall 97. I think it was coined for the Fall 97 tour. So right out of the gate, we're getting this Cal Funk. And you mentioned the Virginia Beach show. I mean, I remember it at that night, and I like you, I had heard the tapes of Amsterdam, and I had heard, the summer, some of the new material, but I think all of the new material. But there are friends of mine that night that said, "That's it. What happened to our band? That's now they're just a funk band. I don't understand." And at this point, 10, 15 minutes into this song, first set opener of this big run. Most people in the building, it's their first night on Fall 97 tour. Was it obvious to you at this point that there was some kind of change in direction, or a focus musically?
I don't know if there was more of a change or a focus musically, but this wasn't the first show where they just opened up with a big wild card huge jam, which that was kind of new to us. I mean, that was not a traditional sort of opener format for them. So in that regard, it was different. And the funk was different too. This was not just, the sort of bare staccato funk of the summer. This had droning delay loops and all sorts of stuff going on sort of in the background. So like at the 6 to 7 point minute that of the Emotional Rescue, it's not just funk, it's going somewhere that's completely Phish and not just a cover of, Rolling Stones 1970s, White Boys, Golden Years, funk type stuff, which is what we thought we were basically getting when the song started. We didn't think they were going to jam it out that long. It was a cover song, and they didn't do that with cover songs, at least not back then. So do we really see anything significant about it? No, but we thought it was really cool. And then it dropped right into Split Open and Melt, which was such a perfect pairing. And that was a song that everybody knew. So all of a sudden Hampton went nuts again, and we were back into a Phish show. So from a lot of people's perspective, it was an interesting gimmick. We didn't see it as indicative of something larger, not like we did, the second set of this night and the next night.
Craig, when you described your reaction to this song, being one of the few people in the room knowing what it was, it kind of reminded me of Craig's magic at early detection and early identification of songs, especially ones that come out of left field. So I know exactly his reaction to this. Before anyone knew what was going on, he was jumping out of his skin. Craig, I was standing next to you when you did that, and I don't know if you remember when. It was another time Phish opened with a cover, and we were in San Francisco.
Oh, it was the encore
Encore
at Bill Graham the third night.
Yeah.
And we were sailing all day, and we were thinking, hey, wouldn't that be cool if, they play Ride Captain Ride, because, we're these old men sailing under the San Francisco Bay.
Yeah.
And then we completely forgot about it because the show they dropped was so deliriously good.
Yeah.
And we're like, what could they possibly play for an encore? Both of us forgetting what we had secretly hoped for. And then you get what you secretly hoped for. It's like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
He is so Willy Wonka, and you have a Willy Wonka mustache right now, I might add, for those of you. I don't know if Willy Wonka has a mustache.
No, but I'm getting ready for Tab and Goose tour, so I've got my goose stash going.
And Benji's always ready for Tab and Goose. So after that surprise opener, like you said,
or at least always ready for Willy Wonka. I'm sorry to but...
Well, we know that.
We won't talk about the candy bar.
Yeah. So, like you said, Phish launches into an energetic, funked out, Split Open and Melt. And before we go to break, what else do you like, or what's worth mentioning about this first set, Craig?
I listened to the show several times to try to think about something else good to say about the first set, because it quickly devolved into, here's some of the new tunes. Here's a couple of short new tunes. But the thing that really grabbed me was the Caspian to close the set. This is again like another evolution of Caspian after some of the really sort of raucous, clangy, loud, like just wave of sound, massive Caspians from fall of '96, like Halloween and stuff. This one was a little bit more ethereal and dreamy, and I remember that it ended with this like cascade of delay loops, and they left the stage and the loops are still going. And then the lights came up and the loops are still going. And we're like, is it over? Do we start, our set break? And then finally the music came down. But I do remember that vividly, and it holds up on tape too. Maybe we can post a link to the tape, and people can listen to the audience and the crowd go flat. Emotional rescue.
One thing I got to say about that, when you said they kind of left the stage and the tape loops were still going, you just reminded me of Amsterdam at the Milky Way, the Melkweg, where it was the first time. I think that was the first time Phish played in Amsterdam. I was there, yes. And at set break, Phish came out kind of side downstage and partook in Amsterdam's legal recreational activity, and they all did a prodigious amount talking to fans, and they went back on, and I remember there was a delay loop where the whole band left the stage because Phish was playing along with it with his eyes closed, and he didn't notice that they left. It was unbelievable, and he played for probably a good 3 minutes before he finally opened his eyes and looked around. I was like, oh, and also slowly kind of sheepishly walked off. But anyway.
That's amazing. And Craig, I agree with you with the rest of that set. I remember at the time being very satisfied, and the Prince Caspian, which I've always been a fan of and I've always defended. And it's not really something I would think of as a set closer, but it worked here perfectly. It kind of, with the Emotional Rescue being a very laid back kind of groove that they settled into with the California, and then closing with the Caspian, I thought was great. I want you, obviously, Craig, to stick around, and also everybody else that's listening, because the real headline here is the second set, and we are about to dive into it. But first, it is time for some more TCB, which means that we will BRB. We'll be right back.
Have you ever wondered what it would feel like if your investments reflected what matters most to you? At Green Future Wealth Management, the advisors specialize in helping clients manifest their values in their financial lives. Green Future Wealth Management was founded by certified financial planner practitioner and longtime fan Nick Cantrell, named by Forbes as one of the top next-gen wealth advisors in the country. Whether you are just getting started or have complex investing and financial planning needs, visit them on the web at greenfuturewealth.com. You can sign up for the email list or take the Investing Values quiz. When you feel ready, schedule a free virtual consultation. In appreciation for the amazing Phish community and the incredible work being done by fans across the country, Green Future Wealth Management will be donating 10% of asset management proceeds from new Osiris listener clients to Fans for Racial Equity. Just be sure to mention Osiris when booking your appointment. Create your green future. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc. Cambridge and Green Future Wealth are not affiliated.
All right. We now TCB'd, and we are back. Craig, I'm not that much of a ranker, but I know that you are, in that you enjoy ranking things. And we probably should have asked you where you place Undermine in the music podcast rankings before inviting you on. But since you're here, where do you rate this Hampton Night 1 show in relation to other Fall 97 shows?
That's really tough, because the tour is so tightly packed. I mean, if you follow some of the more prominent rankers on Twitter, you see people dealing with gaps between clusters of shows and tiers, and Fall 97 really doesn't break down that way. But this one is kind of squarely in the middle. It's arguably not as good as the ones that came before it, and it's arguably not as good as at least the two that came after it. But it's still really, really good. And you may differ just because of what you value about shows, whether it's set lists or songs or things like that. But in terms of playing quality and craftsmanship of jams and energy, I gotta say that most of the rankings of this show probably they probably pad it for Hampton, and more objective view would probably put it like right in the middle, I would say, of the fall.
That's interesting because I have a very, I hold this second set in high esteem, but I also hold Fall 97 in high esteem. And I think you are right. I mean, there's something to be said. There are some jams here that are just, hold up 25 years later, which is why we're talking about it. But within the context of the whole tour, it might be middle ground. And that's a good point for us to go into this second set, because the Ghost here, it's worth mentioning that, in some ways, Ghost was kind of the Fall 97 signature tune, right? And I say that because, as we mentioned earlier in the program, it was a new tune, came out that summer, it was in Virginia Beach for its US debut. And it was a great showpiece for what the band was calling cowfunk, but this version, in hindsight, is sandwiched by the legendary Ghost of Note, 1117 Denver, which Trey just talked about on here, and 1128 in Worcester, which we are going to talk about a lot next week. So it works as a great second set opener here, and the band immediately kind of sinks the jam straight into what we now know of, what we now call cowfunk. But 25 years later, we're not really talking about this Ghost. So why is that? When we're talking about the show, do you think it was overshadowed by the other Ghosts, or was it overshadowed by what was to come? Because it is, if you listen to it by itself, it holds up as a great version.
It does. And there's lots to commend to it. And it differs, I think, meaningfully from the other two Fall 97 versions that you mentioned, in that you can sort of see hints of where Ghost was going to go in 98, and a little bit more of the ambient jamming and more reliance on delay and loops, ultimately to the point where they take a delay loop and make it the first sound you hear on the song, on the album, and going forward for every version. Think maybe starting Fall 98 on out. Ghost didn't start with a beat and a bass. It started with just this little whine coming out of the ether. And you can hear hints of that in this Ghost jam, that proto mature Ghost. The idea is there. But if you're a size queen, it's shorter than the other Ghosts you mentioned. And if you like a little bit more of that sort of impactful tension and release jamming, the other versions have more of that. But this one has the most amazing transition into AC/DC bag that neither of the other two have. So, I mean, and as part of the set, going from Ghost, AC/DC bag through Slave, it really just holds together as a complete piece of music, even though you might say there's better versions of each of those songs, other spots of the tour. That 3-song unit really holds together and just resolves really nicely at the end of Slave. So, and without the Ghost setting that up, it's not the same. So it's definitely worth a listen, but it's worth a listen as part of that whole.
Yeah, I was going to ask you specifically, just because you mentioned Size Queen and the length of songs and stuff sometimes draws people to it. And, when I've been studying songs or sets, I look at, I look for the longest, I look for jam charts, I look for that stuff. AC/DC bag popped out. But you say that without the intro and, the first and the last song in that trio, that you necessarily wouldn't rank this one super high.
Right. It's almost like, like Tim Macero, took the Ghost from one session and made that the beginning and created a sonata out of it and put this big AC/DC bag showpiece, and then the slave to end it. But it came together organically, and it really works nicely. But I don't think the Ghost isn't going to make anybody's top X list of ghosts to definitely check out.
Got it.
But for the AC/DC bag, though, it might make some top lists.
Absolutely, and I just love how the Ghost is sort of just swinging along at the end, and then Trey kind of locks into this nice sort of G, and he's just sort of strumming along, and he's G, and then he like modulates to A, and you're just like, and then all of a sudden you're like G, A, and you're like, wow, that's how you're into AC/DC bag right there, and it really works nicely, and it's seamless in its execution. And it was slow enough in real time that everybody kind of got it and was able to latch on. So, crowd goes wild, and it's a really great listen. Again, you can say, well, I like 12/30/97 better, but this one just really focuses in, I think, on the cow funk. Maybe I'm going to say, you can start to hear maybe a little bit of the sins of the cow funk in this version, but it is pure cow funk, I think, in a way that the others aren't, except for maybe like what was the one that went into the Psycho Killer? Is that Auburn Hills?
From Dayton, maybe?
Dayton. Yeah. So, but it's just a monster jam from front to back. Really, takes its time developing, and really doesn't force any ideas. I think as a result that it doesn't reach any unreal peaks either. But it holds together, and it flows again nicely into Slave.
And it was, 25-minute dance party, which of course that was a focus of the band at this point, was keeping everybody dancing. But also these 4-song second sets became a thing, and that it was the band's third 4-song second set in just 6 nights. And, nobody expected to be walking out of a show going AC/DC bag was, talking about that as the jam highlight for the night. But the phrase and the concept of the 4-song second set became some type of signifier. Like, you talk about size queens, it's like the mythical 20-minute mark for an extended jam. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it can definitely indicate something. A 4-song second set sometimes can actually indicate that it was a short set. But I remember walking out of Hampton that night, and that's what we were talking about. We said they did 4 songs, and none of those 4 songs were the tweezers or the big ones that you expect to be. And that way, we realized that any song can fulfill that. If it's AC/DC bad, so be it. But, the 4-song second set was what everyone, I remember at the Holiday Inn bar talking about. Was that something that you were talking about with your friends that night after the show?
Well, I remember hearing about it, even before that in connection with the first set of Denver. It was a 4-song first set, which is even weirder if you think about it. So, we didn't know if that was sort of just a freak thing, and it turned out to be, more of something that you hope to get, I think. So you're right. This was the second 4-song set of the tour?
It was the third, yep, of the tour.
Third, wow, yep. Okay.
The third in 6 shows.
So, that sounds like a trend.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the other 2 songs of this particular 4-song second set were Slave to the Traffic Light, as we mentioned, and Loving Cup. And then there was an unusual encore of Gaiuti. And I'm wondering, is there anything else that needs to be said about this set? Because you have to speak now or forever hold your tweets. Doesn't
That
sound
was
like
an unusual encore.
yeah.
It's certainly not what we were hoping to hear or expecting to hear, but after a lot more experience with Phish, it's funny because it's what Trey wanted to play. and that would become a theme of encores, that would make me laugh going forward.
Up to and including a Friday encore once that people didn't appreciate.
I remember, and a Secret Smile encore.
Yeah. Yeah,
there's been some buttes.
Yeah,
I'm genuinely a fan of all that. So
that's the thing. I always like songs. I like Phish songs. I'm a song guy. So I don't understand the anger sometimes. I didn't get the anger, for the wingsuit Halloween. I didn't get it at all. And playing Friday, I was like, oh, cool, Friday, and everyone else is like, what? It's like, you committed an incredible sin. I forget what show that was. I'm sure you guys know.
I think it was maybe like a 2.0 Camden show, perhaps.
I think
also,
you're right.
The thing is, when you put us even Secret Smile, an encore, it's supposed to be a punctuation mark, but I understand it's not necessarily like a character 0 punctuation mark. It's supposed to also, especially for shows like they were playing in '97, it kind of brings you back to Earth. It's kind of a gentle landing gear. Okay, cool. We're going to hear a Secret Smile. We're going to, sing along or secretly smile. and then be out and be able to hopefully be able to be in shape to drive or get home safely one way or another.
We committed a cardinal sin by talking about 2.0 songs in a 1.0 podcast, but it's all good. And this show has now gone on longer technically than AC/DC Bag. So that has to do it for us today. Thank you so much, my friend, Craig Hillwig, and my friend and co-host, Benji Eisen, and also to RJB, because you never know, he might be listening. And thanks to all of you for listening, and to the Osiris team, especially Eric Limarenko and Matt Dwyer, for making all this work from behind the scenes. Before you switch back to live Phish, let me give a quick shout out to Cash or Trade, the world's only social network where fans buy, sell, and trade tickets at face value. If you need tickets for something you want to go to, or have tickets for something you can't, then go right now to cashortrade.org. And also please remember to review and subscribe wherever you listen or watch. Be kind and rewind, and come back tomorrow for another blockbuster show. That's from Benji's joke that I just flubbed. Another blockbuster show from Hampton Coliseum. See you back on board the mothership. Till then, you know what to do. That's right. Blaze on. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Thanks, Benji. See you guys.
Thanks, Craig.
Osiris.